muted. Holy cow. That's how you know it's been a minute, when you can't even get the mic to come back on. It's like
That's awesome.
it's been like a month or two since I've done one of these,
Yeah.
because we're just trying to get the books out there and
Sure.
everything, just trying to get things going. But I got to tell everyone out there, I got a wonderful guest today, fantastic person. I'm just excited that he said yes to come on. And I would just like to welcome Eric Canete to the SKITS Fun House!
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, no, I appreciate yours. I mean, it's just fantastic to have someone who, I got to tell you, I was seeing your work out there for a while, and I had been following you for a long time, and I was always like, I'm like, dude, this guy does really, really cool stuff, really nice drawings. I can tell he's got some background in actual art, just because of the way that you would do your stuff. And but then, I was like, oh, this guy's got campaign going. He's got all sorts of stuff going on.
Yeah.
I see him on shows. I'm like, well, dude, this is great. So
yeah,
Eric, thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me, Michael. I appreciate it. I wish I could match that energy that you exploded into just now, but I'll try my best to keep up. I'll sweep up behind you. And oh, by the way, welcome back. I didn't know you had taken some much deserved time off. I'm guessing there has been many plates that you've been trying to keep spinning and trying to fulfill your campaign. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
I think the first time that you and I met was we were doing a panel together on I think it was on a K Manifesto show, wasn't it? And that's when I had an opportunity to learn about your campaign. What I love the most about it, I think one of the highlights for me during that conversation was just the creative approach that you had, in introducing sort of how did you guys phrase it? It was like a choose your own adventure type, way of storytelling and presenting the narrative. And I'm like, holy cow, man, that's so creative, and it's so out of the box when it comes to what people had been doing. I think that was the theme of that evening. And ever since then, I've just been sort of, sitting in the background and in the cheap seat, so to speak, and watching you guys operate. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate that. And yes, when you're talking about, hey, I was doing something a little different with the campaign, for us, we were newcomers. No one knows who the heck we are.
Sure.
We had to get started with, starting up Twitter, starting up YouTube, starting up all these things, trying to get yourself out there, like people say. And I was like, well, I need to go further than that. I need to do stuff that differentiates me from everyone else, campaign-wise. So it's like, I just went down the checklist. I was like, okay, I got to do this different, this different, this different, and this different. These are all the things that everyone else is doing. I'm going to do it different. So
yeah, no, I think, you said something earlier to me, which is pretty key, where you're like, oh, nobody really knows us from anybody.
Yeah.
And I don't know, sometimes I get into those conversations with people, especially when I first started, especially when I started entertaining the idea of going into this crowdfunding space, and people were almost holding up these notices of a guarantee. Oh, you're Eric Canete, you have this many followers, you have this much social media, you're gonna do fine. And I hated that. It just gave me so much anxiety, because I wanted to be in a space in which I didn't want to assume something was automatic, because it puts me into an uncomfortable place where I shift into a much easier gear than it needs to be. Now, if I worked really, really hard and it happens to manifest that it's successful, I'm very grateful for that. But to take that initial step and to automatically assume success is embedded, I hated that idea. So it really spoke to me, especially now that you mentioned it again, that you were like, well, nobody really knows us. That's really my approach too, which is, if they know me, great. If they don't know me, even better, because there's an opportunity for me to get more new eyeballs on my work. But it wasn't for the it wasn't for the sake of sitting on those laurels that I approached this campaign. So everything that you guys are doing, everything that you just said really speaks to me. I'd rather do that. The other part I think is key is establishing something that establishes that is uniquely yours. So in your case, it's the narrative of choose your own adventure, right? Which is, again, brilliant. I can't give you enough gold stars for that. And for me, it was simply establishing that I'm going to finish all the issues before the campaign launches, which I think is pretty unique in that I don't know too many people who are in that really privileged position, that really sort of like that special position of having the resources, whether it be financial or just scheduling, to be able to finish an entire miniseries. Because I wasn't doing just one book; I was doing five. You know.
Well, speaking of eyes, I just want to give a shout out to everyone who's watching right now. We
Yeah.
got my wife. She said, "Let's go, let's
Hello.
go." We got Burst Films out there. Good to see you back. We got El Gargoyle. What's going on, El Gargoyle? Man, I tell you what, there's a few people that just kind of always show up, and El
Yes.
Gargoyle is definitely one of them.
I love
And
that.
I know it's like there's certain people that are just like always there for you, and it just feels so good. And
Yeah.
going back to what you were saying a little bit earlier, you were talking about your YouTube channel, you know, trying to
Yeah.
get that off the ground and stuff like that. Now,
Yeah.
for us, we were just like, well, we'll just start doing stuff and
Yeah.
just see what happens, you know.
Yeah.
And we're still going through that process. It's
Sure.
been like a year and a half or something
Sure.
like that, and
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's key, right? I think
yeah,
most people who have, and this potentially could happen to you later on down the line. If it never happens to you, I'm sure you'll be okay. But I think some people sort of psych themselves out in not doing it because they're trying to think of a way of presenting like some kind of new content, a new angle on YouTube. I'm here to tell you, there's nothing new on YouTube,
no,
right?
no,
What's ultimately quote unquote new is that people don't know you. You know, they're not aware of
yeah,
your product. They're not aware of you as a personality. They don't have an understanding of how, your level of professionalism, what have you. You just go down the list, right? And
sure,
YouTube allows for that avenue, allows for that insight into you as a creator and as your project. And they can tell how incredibly excited you are about things. You can update them about like progress as you go. And most people don't even get that far. The fact that you just pressed the button and said, "Hey, we're gonna just do a YouTube channel," that's phenomenal. That's
Well,
amazing.
going off of that, okay, you said, you know, you got to get people to start liking you or to just understand who you are as an
For sure.
individual.
For sure.
One thing that me and my wife have actually struggled with is how much do you let people in? You know, because
Mm.
we're very traditional family. You know, we're Christians and stuff like
Sure.
that,
Sure.
and she's in Hollywood, so she's from the idea of, well, you never say anything to, you know, disrupt anything. You know, it's like you be kind to everyone
Yes.
and you just do the best you can and don't go out there and swing at the fences at people and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
you know, I mean, basic stuff where it's like you be good, you be kind, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I mean, myself, I'm from the other end where I'm like, I just want to swing for the fences. I want to go crazy. I want to do it. You know, so like we're at polar ends and we try and find that happy middle right there. I mean,
Yeah.
how has it been for you? You know, it's like because a lot of people online these days, it seems like they just want to know how far you're willing to go. You know, they want to push you, they want
Yeah.
to get you to say things and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
have you dealt with that?
That's a great question. YouTube wasn't my first time around the block when it came to streaming, right? So years ago, as far back as 4, maybe more than that, I used to stream on Twitch a lot. And that was a college education on curating the creator versus audience experience. And I say that word very deliberately because there's some things that will allow that you should do, and it should be active on the creator's part to give people insight on how you work. You still have to be genuine, right? You
Yeah.
still have to be true to yourself and the pillars of who you are as a person. But not everything has to be public knowledge. Although in this day and age, rarely are things 100% private, and it's all in what you volunteer that gets out there. You know,
Yep.
it's the funny thing is, as a joke, and I don't know how this got out. Well, I know how it got out, but I said, "Oh, I was born on this year," jokingly, just jokingly. I was born 20 years previous to where I was born, so that makes me. And I said it out loud during a stream. Sometimes I will Google myself, and then an article that will come out that will put me at 20 years older than I am. You know, so again, you curate accidentally sometimes you curate the experience into who you are as a creator and as a person. Again, it's important that you stay genuine. It's important that you stay true to yourself. But I think for me, what has worked the best is number one. I think in order to to capture the spirit of what you're talking about, maintain a level of professionalism always as much as you possibly can. And then whenever humanly possible, give detail, but not too much detail.
Yeah.
Like give context, but not over contextualize. And that's what's worked for me a lot, a lot.
Well, I think my wife was just trying to come in
I
and
saw
say
that.
hey, but I
I
don't
saw
know. She
that.
disappeared all of a sudden. So
We
we'll
always
see if
have
she
room,
comes
right?
back. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see if she comes back and wants to say hello. So you said that because of your work and stuff like that, you've actually been able to sit back and work on these books before you actually put them out and get them
Yeah.
out there. Now,
Hmm.
us as being newbies, we were like, okay, let's just kind of put a campaign up. Let's get 10 pages or so and let's
Yep.
just see what happens,
Yep.
because I was just like, no one knows me. I've never done this before or nothing. So
Yeah.
it's just like, and then we did pretty good. We did real good and it just kept growing.
Yep.
But then, I think we ended up shipping maybe a month or two after the date that we initially said,
Mm.
which I didn't really care for, but I don't think anyone really noticed, to be perfectly
Sure.
honest with you.
Sure.
But I personally, on me, it was a heavy, heavy burden. I was
Yes.
just like, I told people it'd be in April. Now it's like June or whatever, and I was
Sure.
just like, ah. So we've actually, going forward, we're not going to run any campaigns unless the book is done
There you
or
go.
will be done when the actual, and thankfully we're in that same position where, I have a really good day job and,
Yep.
I can support myself that way. And it's
Yep.
just great that you're able to do that too, because I think this is how we're going to have to start doing things now, because
Sure.
when we were on K Manifesto, you actually said, I think all of that goodwill has been used up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I'm in a unique position, but we're both in a unique position in which this isn't the thing that helps to support whatever it is that we have to pay for day to day, right?
Yeah.
We have our regular 9 to 5. So it's not for me to say, hey, this is the only way, but I believe this is the way, at least I'll speak for myself. This is the way I establish sort of that brand, quote unquote, brand trust within a customer base that's looking for something different, right? Looking for like, how are you any different than the people who have come previously, who as I've said on the manifesto show, like they've kind of used up that, that
Equity.
equity, right?
Yeah.
They've used up that kindness equity, or that patience
Yeah.
equity. Now, keep in mind, there's plenty of people who's like, hey, as long as you keep me updated, I don't care, right? As long as you keep me
Yeah.
updated on the process and you're not too, absurdly late, I'm on board. But really, in order, at least for me, in order for me to sort of like make that difference, in order for you to pay attention, one, getting as much of the book done as possible, and then two, sort of narrowing that gap between end of campaign to delivery into your hands if you're a supporter or backer of the book.
Yeah.
I think that's I put that near the top 5 things that I need to do in order to make a splash.
Yeah. Also, another thing, and I don't think this is spoken of enough, because I see how much people are out there streaming and working on their projects and stuff.
Sure,
I mean, obviously, we got a 9 to 5,
we do.
and then we're doing this after the 9 to 5. It's like, how much of your life do you want sucked up by X?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, well, I'd rather spend a little more time just getting the project done
Hmm.
uh, than actually spend work until midnight every night trying to get it done within a certain amount of time.
Yeah, yeah. It's a giant juggling act. You know what I mean? It's a bunch of like plates that you kind of have to keep spinning. Part of the motivation for streaming as consistently as you should is that people, especially I'm in that same position with you. People who typically back these crowdfunding campaigns, they may know me from my professional history, but they don't know me as a creator who can do this on his own. So I never rest on those laurels. So part of the streaming, at least in a clip, in a consistent manner, is just so people can have a better understanding of you and your character and your outlook, and obviously whether or not they feel like you're some guy that's going to be able to deliver on your word. But there's
Yeah.
also the part of you is like, geez, this time that I'm spending streaming or doing extracurricular stuff on social media, I could be finishing, you name it, like a page or an image or my book, or I could be fulfilling, or you know what I mean, all the other things that's not this thing. But it's in this day and age, especially if you want to sort of put your stake in the ground when it comes to people being aware of you as a creator. I think streaming is critical. To what frequency is that's where it depends to each creator.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a big thing. We got
Yeah.
someone in the stream here just showed up. King Toad Inc. says, "Yeah, I'm doing the same. Second campaign. I'm waiting until book is nearly ready for print before I
Yep.
launch." But
Yep.
same scenario. Good job. So I can be exactly, and that's another thing I think people should actually focus on. If this is your first time, maybe what you need to do is you need to save up money and make sure you can cover the book before you actually even go on a campaign spree.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's something that I know that I was like, I ain't doing anything unless I know I can afford to pay for it myself.
That's
You
really
know,
fiscally and financially responsible.
exactly. And I think that's something that would help a lot of people out if they say, okay, I want to do this. Well, spend a year building your platform, but also spend a year saving up the money to do it yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there should be, and it should not be just the one business plan for all, right? I think what you should really ask yourself is what resources are available to you, whether it be time, financial, what have you. The scope of your project, right? Is it going to be like, are you going to write your freaking magnum opus, which I suggest you don't, right? Just it's like for me, the biggest, except for the fact that I did like an alien invasion in 6 issues, but whatever. The biggest thing, my biggest takeaway, at least as far as what I was prioritizing with the experience, is all the learning that came along with it, right? Like I wanted to learn how to be a good crowdfunding individual, right? Like I wanted to know all the ins and outs of how to be able to do it well, not just the hitting the go live button and then the project is out there. We're talking everything from like the setting up of the formatting of the book, who I'm working with a really talented individual by the name of Leonardo Olea, who did all of the formatting for Arc Athena. He also did all the graphic design and setting up. That's why it looks as professional as it did, because if you leave it to me, it's going to look like somebody did it with a Sharpie, right? But like learning from him was phenomenal. That was like that stuff he should be teaching in some kind of like some paywall course, right?
Yeah.
But he gave it to me for free. That, and I got an opportunity to talk to my printers, getting a chance to know like, well, this is what the paper stock is, and these are all the terminologies of what it means to do hardcover. What end pages look like, what does your delivery window look like, and how do you get queued up behind all of these other orders, setting up the right expectations for your backers and customer base so it delivers at a specific time. It's just all of the learning I wanted to know. And then when it came to the actual final, as we're closing out on, what is it? It's like we're under 48 hours at this point. Like as we close out book one, what I think near the top of it's got to be like top three. Less about the money and more about, the growth of the audience. So if it's X amount this time around, because there's 6 books in total and 5 books here moving forward, what I would hope is that I learned so much more in regards to communicating and connecting with people that the next time it'll be whatever percentage that I set up in my head as my goal, Like we should have X amount more backers so that will, to me, will show that we've made, at the very least, an impact by way of entertainment. Like we entertain people with this first book, that they've done they've done good word of mouth on our behalf, that they've somehow convinced more people to come in and join us on book 2.
Well, see, that's another thing too, is once people actually have it in their hands, what the response will be. I mean, for me personally, it didn't hit me until it actually started landing in people's hands, and I was like, oh man, people are about to read this thing. I wonder what,
Yeah.
like what's about to happen.
Yeah,
And,
no, that's an anxiety of
I
mine as
know.
well.
I know, it's just like, okay, well, I just put it out there. It could be a complete bomb. And like, it never even crossed my mind that it would be a bomb. I was just like, oh, this is awesome. Here we go, And,
Yeah, yeah. I think
and
in order for myself, the mechanism that I put into place so I don't go into that anxiety space of like, oh my gosh, why? What if people don't like it? Which is a very human. It's very natural to want to be accepted. But for me, it's more like, number one, can I do it? Right? What were my goals in regards to being able to, or what were my goals in doing it in the first place? Which is, I want to see if I can shut myself up from being so overly critical of mainstream comic books, mainstream movies, what have you. Like I caught myself multiple times pointing things out, like narratively why things don't work or why things don't work artistically, yada, all these things, all this laundry list of things, and I just got sick of hearing myself talk. So that was a goal for this book, to be like, okay, just shut up now and do the thing that you actually want to do,
Yeah.
so that you can say, hey, I proofed it out, and was I wrong or was I not wrong? Did this work? So ultimately, it's just again, just there's plenty of people who complain. Not many people actually do anything about it, and I wanted to stop being one of those people.
Yeah, definitely. I'm right there with you. That's why I did this. I've been working on it for 20 years. But we have
Yeah,
a question here. I thought was really
yeah.
good from Burst Film. What does Eric think about 30-day only?
Mm-hmm.
What was your thinking behind that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It would be different. I think I would have approached a different strategy if Arcathena was like sort of a one-off graphic novel, right? One 64-page hardcover graphic novel, and then I wouldn't have the next one until whatever, mark the date moving forward, let's say a year later, 8 months later, whatever the time is, right? But unfortunately, or I guess in this case, fortunately, Arcathena is 6 issues. So I wanted to be able to deliver in a cadence that would keep the excitement going from the fan base, right?
Mm.
And I believe I should be able. I think the best way of being able to do that without backlogging myself with so much fulfillment work, because I put something into InDEMAND, is to end issue one, wait until fulfillment of issue one or book one, and then somewhere in there, in the 3 months that it'll take, 4 months it'll take to fulfill, launch the book, launch the campaign for the second book. I want to be able to do that quarterly. I don't want to say quarterly, because the moment I say, I'm like, oh, that's 4 per year. That seems like a lot of work. Let's say 3 per year, you know?
Well, definitely launch the second one after you've shipped the first one.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
I've seen a lot of people just tank because
Yeah.
they tried to launch a second campaign and the first one hasn't even shipped yet, you know?
Yeah,
And
that's really, yeah, I don't know why that made business sense to people, assuming they went in there with a business hat on. That doesn't make much sense. It's like people haven't even gotten the first product yet. How do you know whether or not people will be, your supporters of that first product will support the next one without having received, beyond just proof of concept that is your promise page on your campaign? They need to be able to see it and go like, whoa, this is really impactful. Let me go ahead and back the next one, and more importantly, tell other people to back the next one.
Yeah, definitely. I'll tell you what, since we're talking so much about the campaign, let's go ahead and show the campaign right
Let's
quick
do it.
here. Share audio, bam. And this thing is spinning. Why is this thing spinning? All right. Looks like it's going to be good. All right. Did I lose you?
No, I mute myself because I
Oh,
don't
you
want to get
muted
no.
yourself. Well, I was going to ask you. I was like, do you want to talk about it, or do you want me to play the
Oh,
video
it's really
first?
up to you, man. It's really
All
up to
right.
you. We can definitely check out the campaign first, and then we can watch the video afterwards
Let's
if
just do
that's
the
what you.
video. Let's do the
Cool,
video. All
cool,
right.
cool.
All right, I will tell you one thing straight up. I like the fact that you had no one speaking over the actual video.
Yeah, yeah. Is that a preference of yours?
I will tell you, usually the people that they have doing the speaking over the video, in
The
my
voiceover,
opinion,
yeah,
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 usually ruins the video, in my opinion.
yeah,
So I was just like, I just want really kick butt music that's really fast, that gets people excited,
yep,
and show them the visuals, you know?
yeah. Yeah, I'm in the same boat, and I've recognized that as well. Some people execute it a whole lot more professionally, or at least more compellingly than others. But certainly, for my preference, I'm like, let's just do the sound effects, the music, and just enough titillating information that
Yeah.
makes you want to read more about the campaign. And to his credit, Leo, again, book designer, sort of formatter of the miniseries, also did all of that animation, all of that pre-production work for that video. So I've got a pretty amazing powerhouse making sure this thing looks as slick as it does. So thanks to him.
Well, I will also say that campaign videos, I kind of see them as like a portfolio
Hmm.
review.
Hmm.
You know how like whenever you set up a portfolio to show to somebody, they're like, "Well, how many images should you show?" And it's like as least amount of possible to show just how awesome you are.
Sure, that's a good rule of thumb for
You
sure.
know, it's like you put up 16 pieces, you end up taking out like 4 or 5 or 6 pieces and dwindle it down to just your top like shebang, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
And
remember, growing up as a kid in the era of like Christopher Reeve's Superman, Michael Keaton Batman.
yep,
Those first trailers for those movies were just enough to sort of tickle your brain to go like, whoa, that is really super cool. That is
yeah,
the potential of that is so freaking high. Again, just to get you engaged in the potential of a narrative, of the movie, of the visual. And I still hold true to that. There's a version of this video that's a bit more talky in regards to me talking about the tiers, talking about like what's going to be involved, and the difference between an Indiegogo sort of hype video versus a Kickstarter informational. Here I am, who I am as a creator, yada yada, right? And as much as I like that, because the other video, as much as I liked it because it is pretty dang comprehensive, I always defer to this one because I think there's enough, as you said, sort of like just the right amount of pieces to make people go like, okay, I'm in on the visual. I want to start reading about the campaign.
yeah, exactly. Years ago, I don't know if I told you this before. Anyway, I never can remember what I've said to people in the past. I can't remember if this came up on the show, but I worked for Todd McFarlane for a few years,
Oh, right on.
and yeah, and one of the things he told me, he was just like, you kind of going along with the same thing. It's like as least amount as possible, as most impact as possible. And he was like, you remember like Batman when it originally came out?
Yeah, yeah.
He was like, all it had was just the Batman logo.
The logo,
And
yeah.
you were like, "Oh my gosh, Batman's coming!" And
Right.
he's like, "It didn't say that. All it had was
Sure.
just the logo." But
Sure.
it's like you knew that's what it was, but it was strong and impactful.
For sure. Yeah, the music got you, the lighting got you, they landed the mood really well.
Yeah,
It's great that people knew what that logo was all about because like globally, nationally, people know what the bat symbol looks like. But I think the
yeah,
spirit of that is something that I've always, and it's clear that you have too. We both tried to capture in our like the hype videos, right? Like or the come and pay attention to this campaign video.
yeah, definitely. So tell me about Arc Athena. I mean, this is your baby. This is what we've been talking about for a little
It
bit.
is.
Tell me about
It is.
what can you tell me about the story? Why should I buy this?
Story
Tell
wise, that's somebody had said to me like I can't remember who it was that I was on a show with. I think it may have been Art T Bear, and he pitched the elevator pitch for his black and white book, and then they said, "Okay, Eric, your turn," and I just looked blankly at the camera because I'm like, I do not have a slick elevator pitch for Arc Athena, except to say that I don't do I don't know how to do the elevator pitch well. So
Oh man,
I
you should
I
have came to
really
me like
I
that. That's
really suck at it. So I tell them about the narrative, right? So the overall themes as I'm trying to write it is that there's two different teams that are being backed by the Art Corporation. One is the public facing team called Athena, who effectively like they're the show, they're the distraction, they're the people who are the YouTube/social media personalities that Art puts in front of people so that they are sort of pacified. side. The guys who actually do all the dirty work, all the murderous, awful things that need to happen in order to keep the world safe, is another team called Arc Poseidon. You'll be able to see some of those characters if you scroll down in the campaign. Now, they both have their roles to play in regards to the global theater, but what happens when those roles are taken away, or at the very least, one team is forced, compelled to step into a space that they weren't curated or built for, like an alien invasion.
Okay. Alien invasion. Okay, so if I'm sitting here thinking, like, what's your pitch? You know, like, I'm thinking it kind of sounds like these people kind of do things in the background. Is it kind of like a wag the dog type thing?
It may be, yeah, sort of, kind of.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm
so
trying
we
to think
got
of
so
like
we
it.
got.
I hate
Go ahead.
pitching. It makes me laugh whenever somebody goes like, and I had a conversation about this offline with friends. They were like, I hate it when you do the Hollywood pitch of like, it's kind of
Oh,
like
I
Men in
know.
Black mixed with blah, mixed with blah. I can't stand it. It makes me
Yeah.
laugh, and I do it tongue in cheekly, but rare is it that I'm serious about it at all.
Yeah, that's always the worst thing. I always hear people say that, and it's just like, no, no, don't do that.
It's
But
typical.
what it
Yeah.
does though is if you can get the big arc ideas, like the reason why I said wag the dog is I was like, okay, so it's kind of like the background. It's like something going on that's not really what's going on in the real world. Like trying to distract you and stuff like that. So
Correct.
it's like, okay, so you take that idea and then you wrap it into a sentence that would best work for you,
Right.
and
Right.
like
You and
for
I, you
skits.
and I should have workshopped together before I came onto your show, so I could give you the elevator pitch.
Yes, well, for my wife, she, like I said, she's from Hollywood, so she was like, we have to have an elevator pitch. I was like, all
Oh,
right,
sure,
what is it?
sure.
So for ours, it was like Skits is a book about a guy who can't tell the difference between his dreams and reality.
Right on. Easy
It's
peasy.
Yeah, it's just that. And once you say that, then it gives people an idea where they can start from, and then everything you say underneath it comes under that umbrella arc of
Compounds
that,
that,
and
yeah, for
and it
sure.
makes it so much easier. But that's a tough one. I mean, it sounds like you got a lot of stuff going on in yours.
Yes, and that's an under, and that is an understatement. Really, it's like, I'm trying to capture the kind of superhero books that allowed me to sort of appreciate what it means as a reader and to have aspirational heroes.
Yeah.
Part of that is to me growing up reading X-Men books. Part of that is me reading like big bombastic unapologetic comics before like the fantasy of something that the movie theaters couldn't deliver to you back then. Comics was able to do it in zero budget, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to help capture that.
Cool. Cool. Definitely. So it looks like we have someone who's added themselves in, who wants to be a part of this conversation.
Yes.
Carshénah, what are you doing? Black Star.
Hey guys, how are
How are
you?
you? Great to hear from you again.
Oh, thank you. I just want to give a shout out to you, Eric. The book is amazing. We
Thank you so
backed it.
much.
We're so
Thank you. Thank
excited.
you.
And when Michael said that SKITS Fun House, you were so unfazed. And I was like, oh, Eric. Eric is so unfazed. And I love it so much.
I read that and I was like, I was thinking, as Michael was talking while I was thinking about that comment, I was like, it's probably because I have children and they have like energy explosions that I have to sort of, like, okay, I can't get caught up in that energy or else this is gonna turn away. That's not ideal for me.
Bring them
And
on. Help yourself out. I told you, DM me. I will hype you up. I will give you the energy that you need.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's been sort of a thing that people have sort of tongue-in-cheekly given me feedback on. Is like, I think Eric is catatonic, and I'm like, no, no, no. This is as high as I get, because if I ramp it way down to when I typically when I'm just drawing, this becomes like super serious face, as my wife tells me.
That is awesome. I just want to say, not to impede on Skits' interview with you because it's going great, but let me just tell you,
Yeah.
yes, have that elevator pitch because you are your own walking billboard. And I
Yes.
tell that to people all the time because if you're going
Yes.
grocery store shopping and you're wearing some cool shirt and someone, just, oh, I like that band. And you're like, yeah, cool. You get to talking. Then you need to be like, boom. Oh, by the way, not to
Yeah.
like always, try to pitch. I was doing one, but it just may come up like, oh yeah, hey, what do you do? You're like, oh, I'm
Oh,
doing a
absolutely.
comic book. What's going
Yeah.
on? And you think, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I got this one, blah 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 blah. Because if you don't, people be like, all right, cool band, and you're like, oh man, there goes my $85 right there.
Oh, that's a
So
good point. That's a very, very good point. I've definitely taken that to heart. I've just not spent any amount of time sort of developing it and honing it. The moment I get close to something, I will then go back to work, do one less interview. It'll go and span between interviews, and I'll completely forget. Like, oh, that felt really slick. That felt really well put together. Fast forward a week later, I'm like, what did I say in that previous interview that really made me go like, yeah, that was really
right.
slick.
It's like
I'm not
that
very well
meme.
practiced at it, but thank
It's
you
like
so
that
much.
meme that says, after an argument, it's like after the argument, then you have all this good stuff to say afterwards because you're like,
Right,
oh, I forgot. Oh, what do I
right,
do? So,
right. It's something to that, but I'm glad that people know how to do it because I have a point of reference. As Michael just like pitched it just now, it's like, hey, that's great. That was incredibly succinct, and as he said, like it gives you enough of an umbrella that people can build, extrapolate from, depending
mhm.
on which direction you lead them narratively. So that's pretty smart.
I just want to say again, awesome book. We cannot
Thank you.
wait. Good strategy that you started with your newsletter first. And that
Yes.
is something unique that we're excited about, especially for Skits Origin doing the pre launch that's up right now. I mean, we're giving people
Yeah.
$5 off, but you were giving like a bust. You were doing
Yeah.
all kinds of giveaways.
And that was fun.
I hope that you can talk about that. But yeah, we're down with the book. We're down with Arkathena, and
Thank you.
uh, good job and good show, honey.
Oh well, thank you. Why don't you pitch your shows going on every night before
Well,
you
no,
take
this
off?
is yours. I don't want to overtake it, but I
No,
will
go
in just
for
a
it.
moment.
Do it.
So, Verse Films Productions, we're doing a 31 Nights of Halloween. What we're doing a Screamtober, what we've dubbed it, and actually, I was so excited. I plugged in Screamtober on Google, and we're the only ones doing Screamtober as our
Hey,
like
that's
name.
great.
Everybody
That's
else was
great.
like Ghosttober or 30 Nights of Scream. And I was like, that sounds kind of mechanical. So let's do Screamtober. So go out, check it out, guys. Subscribe. We are a fledgling new channel, but we're uploading a video a day. Tonight we're doing Jaws. This is Music Week. So tonight is Jaws, and we're asking the question, is this the most iconic horror movie music of all time?
Oh, for
So
sure.
come by, let us know. We just do like a quick synopsis of it, and that's about it. So make sure you
Wonderful.
subscribe. Thanks, guys, so much.
See you,
Wonderful.
baby.
Thank you.
So yeah,
That was
whenever she,
cool.
yeah, no, whenever she comes on, I'm always like, I want to say, oh hey babe, Carshénah, Black Star. I'm like, crap, what do I say? Because
You're doing fine.
yeah,
You're doing
well,
fine.
also we're like 2 years into our marriage. I find myself whenever I'm talking to other people, accidentally going, "Hey, baby," I mean, Dad. It's just like, I'm like, oh my gosh,
It's
like,
typical. It's
I
typical, and
know.
it should be 100% okay.
It is. I don't worry about it too much, but I just like, oh my gosh, this is taking over. It's like, what's going on? I can't think straight.
Eric the
So
Guapo says, "This is how I pitch Arkathena, $25 hardcover, no stretch goals." I'm like, that's a different pitch, all right.
yeah, that's terrible.
Depending on how you want to emphasize that this thing is not to be missed, number one, and number two, that it's delivering to you a premium product. Those are two great bullet points that you hit, which is to say, hey, this thing is not going to be stretch gold into a hardcover. It's going to be given to you as is. It's going to be given to you as a hardcover right out the gate. It's going to have all the bells and whistles when it comes to like polish, from like UV coating to like all the supplemental stuff of like 48 pages plus. It's 64 pages in total, and it's 48 pages worth of story, and it's got X amount of pages of supplemental behind the scenes work from like concept art. And it's got the, what do you call it there? It's got the limited edition cover and all the other tiers that come along with it. We don't put it, at least I decided not to put that into sort of like a stretch goal sort of system,
Yeah,
into that stretch goal gate. I just wanted to, again, just give it to you the way that I believe it should be presented, not just because of my own personal preference, but also as a backer, I want you to be able to hold that thing in your hand and go like, whoa, this feels really good. This feels like a premium product. This feels like I know where my contributions went to, and presenting it to you in hardcover with that UV spot, actually, to me, I believe that we've accomplished that.
Well, tell people about your featured tier here. That's usually the tier that I like to look at for people.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the featured tier? Why are you selling this one particular one? Why is this at the top? Tell people
Yeah,
about
that
that
makes
one.
a lot of sense. So the featured tier includes the standard edition with the cover that you're looking at on the left there. That's your standard hardcover comic book size as far as dimensions is concerned. The next one over in that feature tier is my sketchbook called Drop 2021, and that has about 56 pages worth of all the commissions and personal art that I generated in about the past year and a half. And I normally do that. In the past, what would happen is that when I'd go to enough conventions and do enough commissions, we would then collate all of those commissions and release them as my art book or my sketchbook. This is something similar to that, and if you scroll down in the campaign, you'll be able to see samples of those pages. The last thing inside that featured tier is a black and white, no color, no dialogue, 11 by 17 representation of Arc Athena 1, which from an artistic standpoint, I get a lot of information, seeing how an artist works and builds their pages. You can see some of the sketches that are still happening under the inking and all that kind of stuff. So that to me has always been a very sort of sought after concept. So I've included that in that featured bundle.
Well, I gotta tell you, that was the main reason why I bought the featured bundle, was for the black and white oversized book.
Right on.
For me, I was just like, this is exactly what I want. I want to see the work. I want to see it, in its purest, rawest form, that sort of stuff, And I've made comments like this before on some of your posts where I'm like, I really like what you're doing with the work. You're just getting into it. You got a lot of emotion in the mark making, which is something that I usually this is, people are like, oh, what's good art comparative to bad art? It's all subjective. And I'm like, I don't think it's subjective, to be perfect. I mean, everything is subjective to the individual.
Sure.
But once you go past that, I definitely believe that there's ways of telling sophisticated art from just stuff that hasn't quite gotten there yet. And usually it has to do with the mark making, confident mark making. And that's something that I definitely see in your work. It's like, here's a guy that's been doing it for a long time. It shows. I can see it in the confidence in his mark making. There's a lot of energy there. He doesn't get rid of the energy by putting every line perfectly on it, the inking process,
Right.
So that's definitely
thank you
something.
For that.
Yeah,
thank you for that. To add to that, though, that thank you. I appreciate it. To add to that, in the black and white artist edition, Leo, again, doing all the pre-production artwork and setting up, actually found a great way. And I don't know if people know this, but all of Arc Athena went through, as I produced it, is all out of a digital pipeline using my iPad Pro and Procreate. So to sort of come up with a way to make it feel like one of those old school artist editions from, like, for me, it was like Walt Simonson and Sal Buscema and like Jim Lee, their artist editions and that IDW has released. Leo found a way to marry that concept, even though he was only dealing with digital files. So there is this feeling of like, it's weird to think of it in 11 by 17 terms in regards to this, because it was never done traditionally. Like when you see those artist editions from some of my favorite artists, those were being shot from or scanned from their original pages. But this having not done that, Leo has sort of emulated that in the best possible way. So again, you're going to get a ton of learning once you open that book, and as far as like where my sketches were versus the final ink line that I decided to go with.
Nice. I just think that's fantastic. So process wise, actually, do you mind if we talk a little bit about your art process?
100%. I'd love it.
Okay, so, and this again comes from some of the stuff that I've seen on your page, on your Twitter account, and I've commented on. But one thing that you do that I really, really enjoy, and this just comes from, I'm guessing you have some sort of art background behind you. uh,
Yeah.
you do a lot of work on toned paper, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of those things that I just don't see people doing that is so good of a thing. It's like you can tell that someone actually knows what they're doing, because it's like, well, how did the masters do it? Well, usually the masters, they do their drawing, they tone the canvas, they
Mm-hmm.
work their darks from there, and then their lights from there, from that
Sure.
mid ground. You
Sure.
know, so tell
Yeah.
people a
Yeah.
little bit about those, if you
Well,
don't
the
mind.
tone paper primarily came from like I didn't like filling in the entire paper with color. There was so much work, a lot of heavy lifting if you pick the right sort of tone. And the example that you gave is like you pick the right sort of undercolor. It sets up a lot for you. You don't have to
Yep.
do as much work. So part of it stems from my overall laziness, right? But also it's because it just adds a level of like in my opinion it adds a level of prestige and thinking that not many people approach when it comes to doing your traditional when you do your standard sort of commission work, which is 11 by 17, can't Bristol board, yada yada yada, and you just draw this superhero. Like, I think it adds a texture that not a lot of people are able to capture.
Yeah.
And because I work primarily in value anyway, right? Whether it be a warm gray or a cool gray, what have you, and I build out of that color, or I build out of that baseline color, whatever the tone paper is. It really helps to solidify volume for me. And
Yep.
so, for like you said, it's like you start off with a baseline color, whatever it may be. If it's I'm trying to do a moody piece, that goes into consideration, but often not. So if I start off with a base color of whatever, and I build my tones or my values out of that, either going lighter or near the end when I start applying whites, or on top of that I start applying color on top of that value drawing. It just makes it so much easier. I just think better in that context. I'm not very
Yeah.
comfortable with color anyway, right? So whenever a lot of the work is done for me by the tone paper, oh man, it's a godsend.
Yeah, I mean, and also, I think one of the things that people tend to do is they overdo their drawings. They either
Yep.
noodle them to get to death, or
Yep.
they use way too much color. And when
Yep.
you use a good toned mid ground, you can actually leave a lot empty, and it still feels like you've done a lot. You
Absolutely.
know,
Absolutely.
it's just wonderful to see. I mean, these are things also that you learn in illustration class. Hopefully, if you had a
For
really
sure.
good art class in high school, they might have
Yep.
taught you.
Yep.
Uh, did
This is
you
stuff that
did
I had to learn on my own. I never went to a single. I
you ever
went
went to?
from I went from high school directly working into the animation industry. So anytime that I would pick up anything from those guys based on their whatever, based on their previous experiences, their collective experiences, I would just jot it down or as best as I can to remember it. The issue with me is I'll do it and I'll do a lot of learning based on that thing that I'm doing the exercise for, whether it be like tone paper, whether it be like
Yeah.
doing marker renderings, whatever. The issue with me is I need to keep doing it or else I'll just forget. So the
Yeah.
next time somebody asks me to do the same exact thing, I'm all like, "Oh yeah, I remember drawing that back in the day. Now how did I do that
Yeah.
then? Let me relearn it all over again."
Well, it becomes like muscle memory. So if you
Yes.
got to keep doing it. It's just
Yep.
like drawing. Drawing is definitely one of those things. If you
For sure.
stop doing it, you lose it. You
For sure.
got to keep it fresh in the mind, because you forget how to make all those little bitty changes like anatomy,
Yep.
faces, stuff like that. I mean, you can always go back and do like buildings or shapes and stuff like that really quick. But
Yep.
humans, when you're drawing humans, you have to stay on top of that, because everyone knows what a face looks like. And if it's a little bit off, they can tell,
Yeah.
because we're used to looking at each other. But you can draw a dog and it could be all off, but they wouldn't notice because they don't look at
Right.
dogs in the face all the time.
Right. Right. No,
You
that's
know?
very true.
Yeah.
Somebody it's your wife that said, ask Eric about the vibrant colors of Arcathena. What were his
Yeah,
color
there you go.
choices, or where was his imagination in the coloring process?
There you go.
That was an active decision to infuse. So here's what I'd recognize in current mainstream comics, and this is, but this is by no means accurate, right? Like, I don't know what happened in superhero comics in by which people have deferred to a certain color palette that doesn't that doesn't entice or excite your eyeballs when you look at it. It harmonizes really, really well. It all works on the page, and you take a look at it and you're like, whoa, that's really, really pretty. But it's not exciting to look at, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that was an active effort, again, just to capture the spirit, not necessarily the exact color palette of the comic books that I grew up with, which are a tiny bit more saturated, a tiny bit more sort of, like I've used this term before, but unapologetically like bombastic, you know? And then it was a matter of finding an individual who could actually execute it as it was in my head. I've had, you may not know this, Michael, but I don't think you will, but like I've had historically an awful history of finding a good colorist to work with. So looking for a good partner, a collaborator that kind of has mind reading powers was near impossible back in the day. I got pretty close. I worked on a book called Iron Man Enter the Mandarin, and Dave Stewart colored it, who's the guy who's responsible for coloring like, you know, Mike Mignola and a ton of other different people. But he's phenomenal. And that was the last time I remember going like, whoa, that's really great. Giovanna Nero, who colored my work on most recently for Mark Millar's Chrononauts 2 book that came out. She had a very specific color palette, and again, she captured the feeling that was appropriate for the tone and tenor of that book. But with this, it's all out action, alien invasion, superhero powers, and so on, right? Big explosions. And so when I found, there was a book out there that was doing promotion by way of an image called Sovereign Wolf, and I remember turning to Eric Weathers, who's the letterer of this book. You know, Eric was sort of like retweeting it. And I said, Eric, who did the art? Who did that image? And he's like, I don't know who the artist is. And I'm all like, no, not the artist, the colorist. Because it was so dang good. And that's how I ran into Giuliano, who has what I think the closest thing to be like mind reading powers that I was kind of hoping for since forever. And so when he took a pass at the first couple of pages, as a matter of fact, one of the first things that he turned in was that iconic page of the helicopters all flying. He was so careful and precious about not disturbing or like, you know, being destructive to the line work, like from the blur to like knocking out color, so it turns out to be like a you know, a unique shadow or whatever it is. But he got so close. I was like, this kid is really, really good. And so when I offered him the job, he was excited about it. He was like, oh, great, I'd be happy to do it. It's really, really awesome. How many pages is this? And I think he thought I was going to say like 64, which is what he'd grown accustomed to. And I said, Jules, by the time all is said and done, this is going to be like 250 pages worth of work. And he was like, holy, I've never done that much work in my life. And I said, well, get ready for a marathon, kiddo, because we're about to do 5 issues worth of this stuff.
That's awesome, man. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool.
He's great. He's phenomenal.
Well, I tell you what, man, let's just go ahead and leave it at that for today.
Yeah.
This has been fantastic, and I always don't like to go too long and keep people around.
I get it.
You know, you got things to do. I got things to do.
Yeah, man.
But
I appreciate your time, though, dude. Again, welcome back.
Thank you.
I don't know how many more you're going to do hereafter, but I hope you do it consistently enough, because you're about to, based on that trailer that you had shown, there's a new book forthcoming. So keep doing this. This is really smart.
Yeah, actually, that's something that I was just about to tell people one last time. Give people one last pitch. Like, say, hey, go out there and get Arcathena, because this is the coolest thing. We only got a day left, and you got to, I'm going to hit this baby seal unless you go buy the book.
I think I'm going to, at that level of energy, I'm going to leave to you. You've got that corner marketed. But there is just under 48 hours left worth in the campaign. If you go to my INDIEGOGO, and I think it's somewhere in chat already, I'd appreciate it. Go check it out. And there's a tier in there that really, somebody asked me, Eric, if it were up to you, which one of these tiers would you recommend for us to support? The businessman hat always says, hey, go for that premiere one, because it encapsulates all the hard work that the team has done in the past X amount of months leading into the campaign, from the sketchbook to the artist edition and so on, and then obviously the book itself. But as a creator, if I were to put on a purely creator hat on, I'd say go support that standard edition and tell me whether or not you like the story. Tell me that it speaks to you. Because at the end of the day, that's all we were working towards for the past X amount of months, and making sure it's the best presentation of itself. So back to campaign. If you were to ask me which tier, go back that main book, man.
All right. Yes. Everyone go out there and get it. I mean, myself personally, I've been following your work, and I really, really enjoy it. I also just like all the energy that's kind of in the book itself, from what I can see. and there's only 48 hours left, so just go over there and get it.
Now.
I know, and the books are almost done. You got like 5 more coming, and you're working on the last one, and these are done.
That's it. Then I get to go into my pure on, what do you call it, promotion ad. Eric the Guapo says, are you extending another 30, going in demand, or is it closing for good? We are not extending another 30. It is not going to go in demand. It is closing, and then we're going to wait until fulfillment happens, or at the very least 50-60% of the fulfillment is out there, and then we launch the book for campaign 2, or for book 2.
That's right. So go out there and get it now.
Yes, please.
Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen right quick. Please. I just want to tell people to, I got to pay the bills here. All right. Here we go. So everyone, I already showed the trailer at the beginning. This is Skits Origin. Actually, what this is 12 years ago, I actually sat down and started drawing skits, and it's the very, very beginning bits of skits. This is like the bare bones, the good, the bad, the ugly. This is where I learned how to do comics. This is just something that I have sitting out there that no one's actually seen. It's 87. That's so awesome. I know, it's 87 pages of content. It's going to be, cool, exciting. It's rough. It's raw. It's, you get to see how I got started in this, learning comics and everything. And it should be fun, So get over there on the sign up list. You got $5 off discount for anyone who signs up. So that'll be cool. That's what that is.
Good luck, man. Good luck, and ahead of time, congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much, everyone. Y'all have a good day. Thanks for showing up, everyone in the chat. We can't do it without you. Share this out. Go get Eric's book. Have a wonderful day and a fantastic weekend, everybody.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.